In this devotional, I'm going to share with you 3 thoughts from Acts chapter 2, verses 22 through 24, where we will hear a small piece of Peter's sermon. Acts chapter 2, verses 22 through 24 says, "Men of Israel, hear these words. Jesus of Nazareth, a man attested to you by God with mighty works and wonders and signs that God did through him in your midst, as you yourselves know. This Jesus delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. God raised him up, loosing the pangs of death, because it was not possible for him to be held by it." On the day of Pentecost, Peter and the other apostles are gathered together, and they have this miraculous thing take place where the Spirit of God comes upon them, and they see it manifested. They watch it happen, and they go out into the streets and they begin to proclaim the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And when they do so in their own language, but they also are able miraculously to speak in the language of the other people who are there celebrating Pentecost. This gets them a bit of an audience. And Peter, while he has this audience, says these words as well as many others, proclaiming that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. These 3 thoughts come from Acts chapter 2, verses 22 through 24, Peter's sermon. Thought number 1, mighty works. When Peter is speaking to the people, he talks about Jesus and the mighty works that he did. He talks about his mighty works, his wonders, his signs. He says that everybody there knows the wondrous things Jesus was able to do. It's not a surprise to them. They knew of Jesus. They knew who he was because word gets around when people are able to raise the dead, calm the storms, cure innumerable diseases. People start to notice. And that sort of thing just doesn't disappear from your memory. The folks know who Jesus is. They had heard about the signs and wonders. And because of that, when Peter starts talking, he says, you know who Jesus is. God demonstrated his great power by Jesus doing all these signs and wonders. You know him. And because you know him, you know exactly who I'm talking about and why these men are able to do this miraculous speaking in other languages. Thought number 2, definite plan. The death of Jesus was a definite plan. It is something that Peter here says was inevitable, that there was no getting out of it, that Jesus was going to die. He was going to die at the hands of the Jews through the Romans. And all of this was a part of the Lord's definite plan for the accomplishment of his purposes in the world. He has foreknowledge of it, he knows it perfectly, and he accomplishes it precisely as he had intended. The fact that it was different from what most of the Jews thought the Messiah was going to be like has nothing at all to do with the reality of God's plan. They were expecting the Messiah to be some sort of political ruler, some sort of man of power and significance. But Jesus was kind of a nobody in this life. Yet, the Lord used him in such wondrous ways that were demonstrated by his mighty works. And all of this happened precisely according to the Lord's divine plan. Thought number 3, raised him up. Jesus, when he is put to death, is not going to stay there. In fact, he cannot stay there. The power of death is not sufficient to keep him in the grave. The Lord raises up Jesus as the ultimate sign of the power of sin and death being defeated. This is the great war that the Messiah fights. This is the great victory that the Christ has, that he has conquered sin and death. This is the message that Peter preaches on Pentecost morning, and it's the message that gets preached everywhere around the world every single day. That Jesus is the Christ, that he is the Son of God, that he has power over life and death, that he has the power to forgive sins. And because of that, our hope and our faith are placed solely in Him. These three thoughts come from the assigned reading of Acts chapters 1 and 2. If you'd like to read through the Bible with me, you can do so by joining the Facebook group Through the Bible, where we are reading the text of Scripture together.